Well, hello there, you and you and you, YouTuberubers and YouTuberettes alike. I just wanted to do a little short talk on the porch step here this afternoon. It's actually more getting closer to evening now. The sun's right over there. It's I'm gonna call her. Making this up, 5:15, something like that. Got off work today, and we had a pretty good day at work. And I just want to chit chat a little about plumbing and the state of the disunion of the United States, and the end of the world and all that other good stuff. As the world continues to fall apart, the soap opera. Marge said to Bob, "But I thought it was our child." Never mind. So anyway, it's good to see you again. I'm glad you could drop in. It's been kind of a crazy couple of weeks, and I'm not really making much in the way of videos right now because, well, I had really nothing to say. If you'd like to know, and I thought, well, I could just run my mouth, but your time's valuable, right? So I didn't want to just be going blah blah blah, like some people are, prone to do. And I wanted to mention a couple of things I saw in plumbing land this week. We set a tub, and this is an oversized Kohler. By golly, I don't know what that thing weighs, but you could probably look it up. It's an oversized in terms of width. It's 33 and a half wide. A standard iron tub is 30 from the edge of the apron to the rear corner. So I mean, a standard tub is plenty heavy, thanks just the same, but this was even heavier. So in order to set that bad boy, I requested an extra helper. So there was three of us fighting that rascal in, and we got her in, and turned out to be a beautiful hookup. And I just wanted to show you this. I was talking with the guys down at the warehouse today. I don't know if you can see that or not. The tip of my finger right there, that throwing finger, I guess you'd call it. It actually looks pretty good, except kind of black and blue. But on my mini grinder, I got a blade recently, and boy, this thing is aggressive. It's a diamond blade, but it's a little bit like, well, not clover leaves, but in other words, it's not just a disc like a round circle, and it doesn't have saw teeth like a saw. It's got these funny looking, well, they look like clover leaves, I guess. I probably got 10 of them on there. Well, anyway, that thing came around and whacked the end of my finger. Oh, and it just lacerated that sucker, and I just went, stop, put the tool down. So I walked outdoors, and it was like paging Dr. Mike. Can we get Dr. Mike in here for some surgery? It's like, sure. Yeah, you take a look at it, went, ugh. So I rooted around on the floor of the truck, found an old paper napkin from like Wendy's or something, and just crammed it over the cap of my finger like that, and then just duct tape, done. And after about 2 hours, I just pulled that off. And well, it looks like it's healing just fine. It's still real tender, by golly. And if you want to find out how often you're going to hit a sore finger, like if you ever crush one in a door, or you have a real sore spot there somewhere on a finger or a hand, how often are you going to hit that thing, and clumsy motions like pow, oosh, ow, poof. So I hit it about a dozen times today at work, and it was just like every time, it's like, wake up! It's like, whoa, that bad boy's running hot. I'm going to take off my darkies for a few minutes here and see how, that's some really bold light out here today, but I've been hiding behind these dark lenses all day, and I thought, well, it's probably not good for my, shall we say, cataracts at 65 to have a whole bunch of extra UV, but I like to just kind of be eyeball to eyeball with you. I don't really respect people who wear sunglasses, especially indoors, at all times. They're hiding something, and I don't want to be like that. So I just want to let you can see my eyes now. I can tell you're lying. How? Because your eyes say so. Well, some people, yeah. You can read tells on people. I guess for some people, if they're pulling on their earlobe like that, I think that's supposed to mean a tell. Hey, if you ever listen, for instance, to Slick Willie sometime, he has two voices. The one of the reasons that he's such a high quality liar, I mean, this guy's an award-winning level liar, is that he actually has two voices, and his regular voice sounds a little bit like a kind of a hillbilly, old boy, redneck kind of guy, but the for public purposes voice, that's the one that Rush Limbaugh used to impersonate, all this gravelly thing. Well, I was never with that woman, or whatever. That's how he does it, because lots of times when you're lying, the throat, the larynx tenses up, and you get weird, like, pronunciations or breathing signals. That's probably more information than you needed, isn't it? But anyway, so I finished whacking my finger yesterday, and we got that tub down. And we today went back and reset a new Delta 1800 in there for the tub shower faucet, and it was a real nice hookup, real clean, and real nice old lady. I'm glad we could help her out. And I just made it clear to her. I said, hey, look, we're going to have to come back after the tile guys are done, or, you know, finished. Then we'll have to put on your trim plates and handles and all that stuff, because right now it's just a rough in body on the faucet. But when you get around a job like that, and where everything kind of slaps together, boom, boom, and I sat down and I just started thinking about it. And I thought, how are we going to get this tub out of here? Because she didn't want to destroy the paper, the, what do you call it, wallpaper adjacent to the tub. She didn't want to destroy the tiles above the tub. She didn't want to destroy this. She didn't want to destroy that. It's like, well, so what I did is I cut, there's a toilet in there. We removed the toilet, bye-bye. And then I got in behind that wall in a bedroom and cut an access hole, an 8x8 hole, and cut off that copper going in for the angle stop, because we couldn't have even set the tub with the angle stop in place. It was nuts, but we made her go. And so I just wanted to say, you know, sometimes when you approach a job, or, you know, you approach life, you know, and you think, oh, this is going to be weird, this is going to be ugly. Maybe it won't. Maybe it won't be as bad as you thought. If you kind of break the job down into bit by bit. How are we going to get there? Step 1, step 2, step 3. That's just step A. Step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's step B, or whatever. And so I try to treat things like that and break a big ugly problem into a bunch of smaller solvable problems, we hope, or at least parts that I can solve, and then the other parts we'll let somebody else figure out. You know, sometimes I get in way over my head with, if it's electrical stuff, I tell people, hey, look, electricity is voodoo. Let's just deal with it. You don't need an electrician. You need some sort of exorcist. Today's non-paying sponsor, once again, 805. Why? Because it's cheap. They got a deal going on over at the Circle K. 2 of those for, what was it, $5.95. And that's actually a pretty good price for 2 quarts. So, sure, why not? And I wanted to mention some of these things that I've been seeing. Today I was watching, what's his name? Darn it. It'll come back to me. The guy with Redacted, his wife and him do it. His name just ran away. I want to say Nathan, but I know that's not right. Anyway, just look up Redacted. You'll find him. And he was talking about this bridge collapse in Baltimore, and about possibly whether it was was a staged, or whatever you call it, a black swan event and all that. And of course, now the so-called administration, that the poodle himself actually came out on a stage and said, there's absolutely nothing that occurred here except a plain accident. There clearly was nothing more than a plain accident, which means everybody in the world believes there was something more to it than that. Because this guy couldn't tell the truth about what time of day it is. So there's questions. So at any rate, Clayton, that's his name. I believe that's his name, Clayton. He was showing the route. And it was sort of like, if you're in the harbor there, I guess in Chesapeake, they were going to head up basically north and then west. Well, they started that route, then they turned a U-turn. Why? I don't know. And they began traveling down here. Then all of a sudden they began to turn. Now all of a sudden power outage on, power outage off, power outage on, power outage off. But one of the last power outages that they had in the on position, they nosed it directly at that pier. And then there was some interesting film he had at the very end of his vid, so check out the last minute of it. It was showing what he believed to be possibly explosive charges up on the bridge shortly after the impact. One on the left, one in the middle, one on the right. And structurally, I mean, possibly that could have contributed. But was this an inside job? Was this like, 9/11? And I don't know is the answer. But turns out that the captain of the tub was, he is a Ukrainian. Or I guess, I don't know if he was the captain or the pilot. I can't remember. But at any rate, one of the big shots on board was Ukrainian. Supposedly after this crash, on Telegram or some other site, I don't know, some platform, I really can't keep up with them all, but supposedly there was other messages that appeared in, I guess, Europe, that said what happened in Baltimore will happen here in Europe if the money doesn't come through for the Ukrainians, which sounds an awful lot like what the mafia would do. I'm wondering if we're dealing with essentially criminals here on an international variety. So the so-called administration jumps down your lungs like right now to tell you that the only thing we know for sure about this Baltimore thing is there was nothing to it except an accident. That's all. But all of a sudden, when the Moscow disaster occurred recently, that murder spree, all of a sudden, within 5 minutes, they came out. It was ISIS. Trust me, I was there. I know ISIS. ISIS was there. And yet, weeks or a week and a half prior to that, U.S. sources were quoted as saying, don't go to concert halls and stuff like that for a while. It's not safe. They knew an attack was coming. How'd they know that? Well, they got pretty good intel. The CIA's got its fingers in a whole lot of stuff. They might have information, but what if the U.S. was behind it? Like, for instance, you know that Nord Stream fiasco where the Russians blew up their own pipeline so that they couldn't sell natural gas and they couldn't make money anymore. You see how effective of a war strategy that is. And speaking of war strategies, another thing I just wanted to cover. A lot of people have been kind of mixed up about this Russia-Ukraine thing, in my opinion. And I'll just show you my short skinny. As far as I know, the Russian army has devoted something like 12 to 15% of their, I don't know, infantry, armor. They got to have artillery out there. There's probably sappers, you know, the guys that set mines. I don't know how many troops they've got exactly, but about 12 to 15% of the total Russian force is along that front. Well, that would be like 1/6, maybe 1/7 of their actual available fighting power. Well, something shifted, and Putin's going after him now. All this time, since 2022 at least, this has been a defensive war on the part of Russia. Do you know what a defensive war means? It means I'm holding the barrier, like, say, for instance, enforcing the boundary, the borderline, with military power. Might want to take notes there, Poodle. But the idea is that they had gone so far into the areas that had voted by plebiscite overwhelmingly that they wanted to rejoin Russia and have nothing any further to do with Ukraine. They spoke Russian, their culture was Russian. It just made sense for them to be in Russia. They said, yes, let's go to Russia. So, of course, Ukraine said, oh, you can't do that. But the lines, the property boundaries there of the folks who did vote, that's how far the Russians advanced, and they halted. And they were very patient, extremely patient. And as a matter of fact, now I'm not trying to, praise Putin too much, but in other words, for the last 2 years, he's been the voice of reason. He's been the voice of restraint in Russia, because their top generals and a lot of their political people are saying, jump down their lungs and squash them now. What are we waiting for? And now all of a sudden it looks like maybe they're starting to move. So they've been moving in with a lot of long-range bombing and missile stuff, and they're taking out, really crucial stuff to run a nation with. If you want to have electricity, bye, sorry. If you want to have a secret police like a Gestapo, well, their headquarters is gone, sorry. If you want to have airfields, well, the control towers are down, sorry. In other words, crucial military strategic strikes. And it looks like, I was listening to Douglas McGregor, he's an interesting guy, a colonel dude, and his premise is that he believes they probably have to wait until mid to late April, perhaps May, before the Russians begin to move their tanks and heavy equipment forward, because the ground is just super soggy right now. It's just going to be a lot of muck and mud and yeah. So just let the ground dry out for 6 weeks. But in the meantime, the Russians have actually begun the war. And of course, Macron in France is claiming, oh, well, we're going to go fight the Russians. And then all of a sudden he had to back down. Well, that sounds like a really bad idea now that I think about it. And so he's talking about possibly supplying only just nuclear stuff. Oh, gee, that's helpful. When you guys start tossing nukes. I mean, these left-wingers are just lunatics when they start talking about the feasibility and the reasonability of an atomic exchange. You knuckleheads. They don't realize that the I guess it was 15 kilotons, I think, on Nagasaki or Hiroshima, I can't recall, 10 to 15 kilotons, which is a lot. Think of a pile of dynamite 15,000 tons of dynamite, being able to successfully ignite the whole thing kathunk at once. That'd be a lot of fuses. Well, that was, by today's standards, a very small bomb. Now, they have what's called tactical weapons. In fact, they have artillery that can launch nuclear shells or atomic shells. And those might be in the closer to the 1 to 2 to 5 kiloton, which is still a heck of a lot of whack. I mean, a 5 kiloton bomb coming down in a city block in a city area, that would be pretty devastating. Well, these lefties seem to think that that's just the most normal thing in the world to consider. Hey, let's go have a war with Russia, because let's face it, Russia's almost washed up, and Russia's failing and staggering. It's almost exactly backwards. The Russian economy is doing fine. The Russian people are stoked up. They're motivated. They're behind their leader. They believe in the guy, and they have got an established track record. Well, they ain't a bunch of saints, though. It's not like they're, God's cavalry that comes riding over the ridge at the last moment to save the people, because they're lining up against Israel, too. They're moving into Syria now. The Russians are moving troops down into Syria, getting closer and closer to Israel. This could get really weird. And I love Israel, and I don't want to badmouth them, but hey, I tell you what, too much is too much. You had 1,700 people, and that was tragic, yeah. And I would think, if you want to have a 10-to-1 or a 20-to-1 ratio, you kill 1,700 of our people, we'll kill 17,000 of yours. Well, they're blown by those numbers, or the devastation is just amazing. And the Jewish folks in Jerusalem are inheriting a lot of hate around the world right now. That's just not necessary. I mean, they've made their point. Hamas knows that you come across and you do that kind of terror attack on Israel, there will be repercussions. You will pay, and your people will pay. Well, yes, but at some point or another, things. I mean, it's sort of like hunting flies with a bazooka, or something like that. I mean, most of these people are just poor and just doing their thing. There's Christians involved as well. Not every Muslim is one of those lunatics with an AK-47 yelling about his so-called God before he go pull the ripcord and blows himself up at a marketplace or something like that. But the thing is that the Israelis, I think, are making a mistake in terms of their overreach, but the U.S. is still bound up with them. So suddenly the U.S. and Russia are talking about perhaps two proxy wars at once. One, Israel plus U.S. in the Med. Number two, U.S. plus NATO in Ukraine. And all run by a senile pervert. This is the chief strategy guy that we've got in the 1600 Pennsylvania right now. Yeah, who, by the way, as far as I know, is he's still on the ballot, I think. But even the Democrats are just done with this guy. So I have no idea what they have in mind. And this election, this 2024 thing, it could get weird. And again, I think prayers for Trump. I mean, just the physical safety. Him and Robert Kennedy, both of them. Because either one of those guys have the moxie and the mojo to begin to beat this thing back, this crooked Democrat, actually, it's an omniparty, the Democrats and the rhinos together. It's like an omni-party, one party. But there are a few people, and I think Ramaswamy could have been one of them. I'd like to see Vivek in high government power eventually. He needs some experience. But the thing is that he's got a good ideological perspective, I think, in terms of understanding what the history is, what's happened, how did we get here. And so I just wanted to talk with you some. The world may be falling apart, and your job may be going crazy. Your family, your household might be, in shambles or whatever. Don't you give up. There's a strategy in all this. As the forces of progress continue, and they want to begin altering you genetically. They want to start in putting probes directly into your brain and feeding this directly into a kind of a jack that would link into the web. And essentially to try to cyborg you. Essentially, the human 1.0 that God made ain't good enough, see? Basically, because it's going to die. The reason it's going to die? Why? Because our father and our mother sinned before God, and they knew what they were doing was wrong before they did it. All sin, according to Van Til, is against better knowledge. When we sin, we always act like, oh, I don't know how that happened. I just fell into it. You do know how you got into it because you wanted to do it and you knew it was wrong. And you did it anyway. But anyway, that's the pattern we're dealing with. And on a grand scale, on a global scale, it looks like global tyranny. It looks like a complete madness, cultural bankruptcy, and a lot worse. But this is no time to panic. And so what we do is we speak the name. We call the name. Now, I want to say this again, and I'm going to intently refer to this. We are to make much of what? Are we to make much of our Christian tradition? Are we to make much of our democratic history? Are we to make much of our race? I'm white, you're black, he's blue, he's green. What are we to make much of? And we're to really brag on essentially one thing: the I Am who is, the great God who has named himself. And do you know why he gave us that name? So that we would call to him. And the name I Am sounds a little bit Yahweh, a little bit like that, Yahweh. Well, the name Yah also applies. You'll see it in the Old Testament, especially in Psalms, Yah. And that's the same God, I Am. This is his name, I Am. I be, I is, I was, I ever shall be. He's the basis, he's the foundation stone of existence himself. You know, I was watching one of these things the other day where, in deep space, we keep looking for black holes, and there's a question about whether they exist or not. I still don't know if they've ever actually found one. But they have this proposed stuff called dark matter. You know why? Here's why dark matter exists. Actually, it doesn't. Here's why dark matter is supposed to exist. Think of the pictures you've seen of the Milky Way. It looks like kind of a big spinning disk with, 4 arms or 3 arms? Kind of it's almost like 4th of July fireworks, but it's a spinning disk with, a jillion stars in it. Well, the problem is that the mass of those stars does not equal enough in terms of the gravitational constant for this thing to hang together. Why is it holding together? There isn't enough mass there, even when you count up all the stars. So what they did is they invented a matter you can't see called dark matter. Why did they do that? Because they needed the numbers to make their equations work. Well, here's the deal. Here's what the Christian might say. Well, you know what? Our Bible teaches that the reality which we see as real here, this stuff around us, and our own bodies actually, that didn't always used to be. There came a day when reality began. God spoke and things came to be, and guess what? That is a providential thing, not only creation, but providence. And in his providence, he, by the word of his power, continues to uphold all things. Why does matter stay together? Why don't all the little gluons and muons go flying away? He has spoken, and they occupy the space he has spoken, that he told them to be there. And they are. And they were, and they shall be, until he says no more. The worldling will tell you, well, matter can neither be created nor destroyed. And the Christian gospel says matter was created and one day shall be destroyed by the maker thereof. But the reason that things hold together isn't because of gravity, and it isn't because of missing dark matter. The reason they hold together is because he spoke, and he coheres, and therefore it coheres. And so in the dark days, and in the bad days at work, and in the crazy days at the family and everything like that, we need to kind of somehow jack back into another position and be able to say, whoa, let's stop and think. Wait a minute, this is all part of God's creation. This was called forth from before the foundation of things. This situation right here, this video right here, you and me talking now, this was decreed from before things that it would be. But everything was decreed in that sense, right? So therefore, we call the name in our confusion. We call the name, and in Jesus' name, it comes out as Yahshua. Same name, Y-A-H, Yahshua is save. It's either salvation or saving, something like that. So his name, when you translate it over into English, I mean, you ever heard all that hocus pocus about, is it Jesus or is it Yeshua? Which is is this guy smart enough to figure out who I'm talking to? What if I get his name wrong? Well, when you translate it over into English, it comes out something like this: I am he who is salvation, or I am saving you. He's real. He's good. And we need to, in the process of all the craziness and all the bombs going off, and by the way, the May so-called treaty thing going on with, you know who, the WHO, um, yeah, that thing is still going down, and nobody's going to stop it. No one's going to slow it down. The national sovereignty of 190 some nations is going down the toilet in under 60 days, and nobody even wants to talk about it, much less our so-called leaders. See, that's what we're dealing with here. These people are corrupt beyond corruption. They don't even hardly recognize themselves as humans anymore. What they really want to do is they want to breed a new kind of human, a new kind that doesn't know anything about God, doesn't remember anything about their Maker, and completely subsists inside of a digital universe without any real world input. Well, there goes my neighbor. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of cheer you up a little bit today. You know, the world's crazy, and don't let it get you down. Because the best thing in the world is this: real people who can look you in the eye, give you a warm handshake, and say, "How you doing?" and actually mean it. In other words, there are real people. There's a lot of phonies out there. There's a lot of weirdos out there. A lot of criminals out there. You know, you should be able to read people and understand what you're dealing with here. But what I'm saying is, the best part of life is what? People. The worst part of life is what? People. It's like that with any job you've ever had or ever will have. The best part is people. The worst part is people. And so we're to make a donation. We're to make a sacrificial gift to our Father, a gift of saying, I'm for the peace which Christ has made. I'm for the honor and the glory which He has established. Not the glory of the USA, not the peace of some man-made treaty. In other words, there's a real peace coming because the real King is coming, and He's coming back in person, and it's going to be wonderful to see. Too bad you can't see the sunshine here, about to knock your eyes out, but this thing's way, way dim. This thing's just like a wet match compared to the brilliance of Him when He shows up. He's the light in person. He is a consuming fire. He is fierce. He's holy, and He's good. So in the midst of all this stuff, let's try to find time in our minds to think, well, I ain't going to fix this stuff. Are you kidding? Maybe with some help, God might help fix me some, and then when He fixes me some, maybe I can reach out my hand and help somebody around me too. Things are getting dark. Things are getting ugly. Don't you be that way. Remember, you're the salt of the earth. You're the light of the world. You're the reason this place hasn't fallen apart yet. Because the people like you, honest, square folk who do what's right and mind their own business. Have a good day, and God bless you.